Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk a little bit about the Browns getting ready for the Commanders in just a second. We start with the Guardians, though, getting ready for Game 1 of the American League Divisional Series against the Detroit Tigers over at Progressive Field tomorrow afternoon. Stephen Vogt asked about how his team is handling everything, how they are approaching not only this series, but the playoffs in general.
That's who this group is. They've been the way all year. They hold themselves to that. It's have fun. You know, we've treated every game like a playoff game. You heard Hedgie say it. You heard David say it. You hear the whole team say we've treated every game like a postseason game. That's how we've managed it. That's how we've coached it. It's one day at a time. And we just need to keep our same cadence and we'll go for it. And our guys are going to have fun. This is an opportunity. You know, we talked about the hard part's over. Navigating 162 games and finishing, winning your division, the hard part's over. Now go have fun. Let's go compete. Let's go be who we are, and let's show the world who we are.
And again, Game 1 tomorrow over at Progressive Field against the Tigers. So take a look. This is the payrolls of the teams that are in the playoffs. In the American League, there's the Yankees and then 3 teams from the Central Division, the Tigers, Guardians, and Royals, all from the Guardians division. And when you look at the payrolls, the Yankees' payroll is $311 million. The combined payrolls of the other 3 teams, the Central Division teams that are left in the American League playoffs, is only $16 million more than the Yankees alone, which is utterly amazing. The Royals kind of threw that out of whack because they went out and signed some free agent pitchers. Otherwise, it'd probably be about the same as the Yankees. So this one is from the Bleacher Report. One thing we've learned about every MLB team during the regular season, the Guardians, honestly, who needs starting pitching? Only one of the greatest bullpens in the history could have bailed out a rotation that has freckles, and that's what the Guardians have got in 2024. No other team is even close to their bullpen's 2.57 ERA, and that includes a lockdown guy at the back of the bullpen, Emmanuel Clase. Without question, the bullpen has been one of the best in baseball and probably needs to get a little help from the starting rotation in these playoffs. Alex Cobb is reportedly good to go. That's the guy that the Guardians traded for. Has had all kinds of issues with his finger and his nails, and it's important because he digs his fingernail into the ball for a changeup and his curveball, his off-speed pitches. So that fingernail is critical. But you have reportedly through, and he's good to go. So you've got Cobb, you've got Ben Lively, you've got Matthew Boyd, who has pitched really well, and Gavin Williams as potential starters. Somebody, 2 of them have to come out and help Bibee out for the Guardians to really go where they want to go. This is also interesting from the Bleacher Report, moves that shape the 2024 playoffs. Ben Lively, Guardians, 1 year, $750,000 deal in free agency. Lively ended up finishing second on the teams in games started and innings pitched. 13-10 with a 3.81 ERA, a 1.25 WHIP, that's walks and hits per inning pitched, and a 118 to 49 strikeout to walk ratio. I would be stunned if he is not part of the playoff rotation. Lively has been really good. If he got a little bit more run support, he would have probably had another 4 or 5 wins without question. This one from MLB.com, Cleveland Guardians season series. So Cleveland edged Detroit by 1 game in the season series, but the teams haven't played since back in July 30th. In fact, so midway through the season last time they played. Tigers at that point in time were 52 and 57, 7 games under 500, 14 games behind the Guardians, and 7.5 out of the wild card race. The Tigers have been just lights out, really, the last month of the season since the All-Star break, to be honest with you. Here are some of the guys that are really doing the job for the Tigers defensively. The top Tigers, when you look at who has been hitting the ball well the last month. Parker Meadows hitting .299, 4 homers, 15 runs batted in. Riley Green, .287, 4 homers, 16 runs batted in. Again, this is just the last month. Torkelson, who was down in the minors, has come back up. 225, but he has been hitting the ball out of the park. Couple of homers, 9 runs batted in. Colt Keith is hitting 265. Trey Sweeney, another young guy that they brought up, 239, or rather 231, 2 homers and 10 runs batted in. And Matt Verling, who has hit the ball well against the Guardians earlier in the year, is only hitting 219 in his the last month of the season. So when we look at it, Tanner Bybee will get the start for the Guardians in Game 1, and here's a look at how some of the Tigers hitters are doing against Bybee. Verling has those 6 at-bats, 4 runs batted in, and a couple of homers. So Verling has really hurt Bybee. Again, this was everything before July 30th. Colt Keith is another one. 9 at-bats, has 3 runs batted in, a triple. McKinstry, a couple of hits in 9 RBIs. Perez, a double. He has struck out 4 times. Green, just 1 of 6, couple of strikeouts. Torkelson, just 1 at bat. Again, the guys that have hit Bybee well, Verling, Keith, and it'll be interesting to see Bybee getting the opportunity to pitch in Game 1, that lockdown ace that Bybee wants to be, without question. Well, Guardians manager Stephen Vogt, catcher Austin Hedges, what they have seen from Bybee this year as he has kind of developed into that go-to starter for the Guardians.
Coming into the year, he had a lot he wanted to prove a lot to the world, that it wasn't just a good rookie year. Obviously his rookie year was outstanding, and then what he did this year, I thought he grew up so quickly. A lot of guys like him that are really fiery and competitive tend to get emotional on the mound when things don't go their way. And I think early in the year he showed some tendencies to do that. And my goodness, he made an adjustment maybe 15 starts ago or so. And the calm, cool, collected guy is out there every pitch, no matter what bad situation happens. The way he responds to adversity looks like a 10-year vet out there.
Tanner, from the beginning, had a great year last year, put himself on the map, and then kind of went through some early season, I'm not going to call them struggles, but kind of had a few hiccups for the first time in his major league career. And really since then, he's bared down. He's competitive. This kid wants the ball in big moments, and Tanner wants to be the guy. He believes that he's a number 1, and we do too. And I'm really excited to see him showcase that in the playoffs.
And without question, that's what you want. Main thing you want in an ace is a guy that wants ball in pressure situations. Bybee wants it. He's got it. He is the starter Game 1 against the Tigers. This is from MLB.com. Players to watch for each team, and this is no surprise. Jose Ramirez, another standout season in 2024. 1 homer shy of becoming the 7th member of the 40-homer, 40-steal club. Postseason success has eluded the 6-time All-Star. 242, 2 homers, 638 OPS over 32 playoff games. Well, one of the reasons is teams generally pitch around him in the playoffs. So let's see if he can get some protection from behind him. Last 30 days, take a look at the Guardians players that have been hot. And Jose Ramirez, top of that list. 321, 5 homers, 12 runs batted in. Lane Thomas, the average not, 228. It's a little on the low side. He does have 6 homers and 17 runs batted in. That's the guy that the Guardians traded for, trade deadline. The outfielder is under contract next year, has been coming up with big hits the entire month of September. So let's hope he continues that in the postseason. He's a guy that could provide some protection for Jose Ramirez. Josh Naylor, 231, 2 homers, 8 runs batted in. And Andres Jimenez, 256, 2 homers, and 8 runs batted in. It all gets underway tomorrow, 1:08 over at Progressive Field. The first game, best of 5 division series. First 2 here in Cleveland. 3 and 4, if necessary, would be in Detroit. If they need a Game 5, it will be back here in Cleveland. Some news surfacing that Terry Francona didn't stay out of the dugout very long. The former Guardians manager, certainly a Hall of Famer who stepped aside because of health reasons last year, back healthy and has agreed reportedly to a 3-year contract with the Cincinnati Reds through the 2027 season, a club option for 2028. Good for Tito. Back where he belongs in the dugout, managing a major league club. And you can be sure those Reds, with all that young talent, they will be competitive next year. And hold on, because good things probably ahead for the Cincinnati Reds baseball team. Francona just seems to have a knack for getting guys turned around and getting clubs into the postseason. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we're going to turn our attention to the Browns, getting ready for a game they have to have. Browns will face the Commanders. Commanders 3-1. Browns 1-3. That one in Washington, D.C. We'll talk about it on the other side of the break. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Browns getting ready to head to Washington, D.C. to face the Commanders Sunday afternoon. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason to start things.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon. I'm just wondering if maybe we're underestimating how much of an effect having Maurice Hurst is. I mean, I look at last year, you look at the Niners game, maybe he's the missing factor on that D-line. Maybe we just don't have that pass rusher that's capable on the inside of doing what makes everything else go right. We got Miles, and he's doing good, but it doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of help. And do we think maybe, even as young as he is, do we think Hall being the pass rusher, is he something that's going to help us? I don't know, but we're going to have to get on the ball. It's time to win. Thank y'all.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Brad, nothing would hurt. I think Michael Hall would help, but the question I have is the run defense. It's been bad.
Yeah, and it's not something that Maurice Hurst I necessarily would fix. I don't think he's more of a get after the quarterback guy. They have plenty of those guys, Dave, right? Like the issue here is that Siaki Ika never worked out, and you have a Dalvin Tomlinson who is a run stuffer, and Shelby Harris, who's a capable run stuffer, but you don't have anybody else after that that's really going to get in there and just take up space and do that job. So when they have to get into their depth, they're relying on guys like Jefferson and other guys along the front there that are more pass rush guys than run stuff guys. And they're getting beaten. I mean, the Raiders had a field day on them on the ground, and the tackling numbers are horrific, right? Like the worst in the league after first contact, which is really telling when you're talking about tackling. I thought what Schwartz said about diving off the diving board in his press conference was really pertinent, because it does feel like they're doing that a lot, like trying to, make the stop in the backfield instead of using their feet, get all the way there and wrapping up in a lot of these tackling situations.
Well, some news out of Browns camp in Berea today relative to the health. So we know that Nick Chubb is out. That's not a surprise. Jordan Hicks out. Naheem Hines out. James Hudson and Alex Wright all out. And no surprises. Now, questionable for the Commanders, Conklin, Michael Dunn, David Njoku, Pierre Strong, and Jedrick Wills. So I see three guys on that in Conklin, Wills, and Njoku who would help dramatically, and I think they would cure some of the ills. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. The offensive line has to be better. Getting those guys back would be such a help. I mean, you would think, right? Like, we don't know what injury, how far they are along in their injuries. Conklin held back with the hamstring. Wills looked like he wanted to be anyplace else in the world when he played the last time a couple weeks ago than on the field. So as long as they bring it, and it's got to be better. Now, Njoku playing will make it an immense difference just because he helps with pass protection, run blocking, and he's an offensive threat down the field. So you're talking about 3 parts of the game that he can help out in a big way. So I think Njoku is the biggest piece for them to get back at this point.
Yeah, it gives you a playmaker. And when I look at this offense, you know, Amari Cooper was supposed to be a playmaker. He has struggled. Nick Chubb's not there, so Njoku would be possibly the biggest playmaker that you have with Cooper struggling.
Yeah, 100%. And so what he can do as a chipper and just getting out in the flat and giving Watson some easier answers. I mean, he has looked in the past to Njoku as his kind of safety valve. So having him back would be huge, because one of the things that he has struggled with prior to last week was just finding the underneath answers when pressure is coming. That's an easy fix right there if Njoku's on the field.
All right, so you wrote an article, and we always look at this when we have you on. Things I think I know about the Browns. The unspoken, undefined, underlying issue plaguing the Browns. First thing. Second, Kevin Stefanski's uncharacteristic decision-making against the Raiders, and the offensive line's making the same mistakes. Let's start with the line. Take us through what your thought is with that.
Well, every team that they see is running stunts and games against them and twists up front, and they can't communicate enough to handle it. It's the same mistakes every week. They can't pass off one blocker to the next guy, and you're getting free runners at the quarterback. It's something that should have been fixed weeks ago. You know, I understand it takes some level of continuity, but you know, when you see the same mistakes happening over and over, that's when you get really frustrated. Like, you get young guys that are going to make mistakes early, but when it's every week and you're going to see the same thing this week because the Commanders have watched tape and they're going to say, well, look at it. I mean, they can't handle stunts. They can't handle, you know, loopers coming around. But the games that defensive lines play to disrupt offensive lines have given the Browns a really, really difficult time. And it's just a lack of communication and experience.
Kevin Stefanski and his, you know, uncharacteristic decision-making with the Raiders. Take us through that.
Yeah, the end of the first half, you know, he's very aggressive often, you know, like depending on his defense, you know, you'd seen Hopkins stripe a 56-yarder that probably would have been good from 70, hit halfway up on the net earlier in the half. You have a chance to kick a 58-yarder with about 1:30 left in the half. Now, I know he was playing conservative there, trying to avoid a double dip, you know, going into the half and out from the Raiders, but passing up on that field goal attempt on a guy that you just gave an extension to, who's 12 of 13 from over 50 yards, seemed rather silly to me, and not a move that he would normally make. Then at the end of the game, he did kind of the same thing, and I agreed with the commentator on the TV, Ross Tucker, who said, you don't call that timeout there, it makes that the last play of the game, talking about the last fourth down in the fourth quarter. If you hang on to that timeout and just run the play, it doesn't give the Raiders an ability to call the perfect play, which they ended up actually doing and calling a great play to defend what the Browns were running. And B, if you do not get or convert that fourth down, you have another bite at the apple. If you can get a 3 and out, you have 3 timeouts left. So I thought there was poor time management there, uncharacteristic of him. And the lack of aggressiveness on the field goal, I thought was also uncharacteristic.
All right, and the top one was unspoken, undefined, underlying issues that's plaguing the Browns.
This is the biggest one for me, Dave. There are tangible things wrong with this team, but there is something intangible wrong as well. Like something we can't see that's going on in the locker room. I'm not saying it's one thing in particular, but when you get a bunch of individuals struggling to do things that they normally do, there's something going on. If you notice last year, this was an easy team to root for. They were very likable. They had high energy, high emotion, passion. They played together. They played for each other. You're not seeing that right now. It feels like a bunch of individuals out there and not a team. And there's something underlying that is an issue here. And we don't know what that is at this point. I've said this before, you know, momentum from one season to another doesn't carry over, and just having the same players doesn't make you the same team. You have to recreate that. They need a big win or a galvanizing moment or something to bring them together. if they want to turn this around, because right now they appear to be just a bunch of individuals.
Yeah, and disjointed at that as well. And I think that's kind of what
Yes.
you're getting at. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi was asked the question: how would you grade the Browns' coaching after the first 4 games? Here's his answer:
D. It's a D. No doubt.
Why?
Their offense is the worst they've had in 5 years. Their defense has not put a complete game together yet, and has been responsible for falling behind. And the special teams they've had 1 decent game out of 4.
It's hard to argue with that. They haven't been prepared. You know, they've looked bad, and that falls on the players. It falls on the coaches.
It does. It falls on both. I feel like they haven't been prepared. In the one area that I feel like they haven't been the most prepared, you know, a lot of the defensive stuff is missed tackles, missed assignments, silly stuff, and some of that is most of that is on the players, right? I do wish Jim Schwartz would adjust more. You know, he kept talking about the change-ups and the curveballs and everything all offseason, but you know, we've seen very little of that. I do feel like they're sometimes pressing a little bit and trying to like live up to the hype of that number 1 defense label they came in with. And sometimes that's making them, you know, go for the big tackle for a loss instead of just making the fundamental play. But on the offensive side of the ball, I would have thought to this point that Stefanski and the rest of the offensive coaching staff would have been able to handle the patchwork offensive line better than they have. This is going on around the NFL, Dave. Other teams are just as beat up on the offensive line, and they're finding a way to protect their quarterback enough to get the ball out. Now, Watson doesn't help that sometimes because we know he likes to hold on to the ball and try to make a play. But I just feel like they've been unprepared as far as that goes. Because, I mean, the amount of hits that Watson's taking, the amount of pressure, it's just inexcusable. So I would say probably like a C, but because a lot of the stuff has been on the players too. But certainly there's a failure across the board with this team. Lack of identity, I would say.
Yeah, they're not running the ball. They're not. Again, you can point to there isn't much they're doing right. That's the problem. It's not like it's one thing. It's everything. So Deshaun Watson's only 3 touchdown game with the Browns was back in 2022, and it was against the Commanders. Washington's defense has given up 10 passing touchdowns this year, most in the NFL, and they've given up 123.3 passer rating, also worst in the NFL. So it's set up, but they've also haven't stopped the run. So this isn't a great defense, but the Browns have been. I have no confidence that this offense can find an identity, I guess is the thing I'm struggling with.
Same. I feel the same way. It doesn't feel like they're close, right? You got a good performance from Watson, and you're like, you want to feel really good about that, but they scored 10 points, and they've had 6 chances to go win the game in the last 2 weeks, Dave, and they're 0 for 6. So in the fourth quarter, combining the Giants and the Raiders game. So they do have a chance here. Matchup-wise, this game matches up well for them to the point of the tweet that, you know, pushing the advantage of, and it's something that they're going to need to be able to generate yards easy.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And you know, to your point, the mark of a quarterback we've talked about it, an elite quarterback, ball in his hand, end of the game, find a way to win the game. He hasn't done that. He's had multiple chances the last 2 weeks and hasn't done that. So I know you wrote an article. The question becomes, how long does Deshaun Watson, how long do they stick with him? Who makes the call? And how important is it that it's handled correctly?
Yeah, so I wrote, you know, it kind of leaves us in. The hardest thing is that he played well and they lost and they didn't score any points, right? Like, so we can't really put the game on a pedestal, and he didn't come up clutch at the end. So But ultimately, we are getting to a point where somebody's going to have to make a decision. This should be Stefanski because he works with him every day and he's running the offense with him. He should be the one that makes the decision if they have to go away from him. I'm not saying it's already decided, but if they do, it should be Stefanski. And when you do, Dave, it has to be handled properly, meaning you can't go back. You can't waffle on this. He can't be a guy that's back in 2 weeks later, whatever else. It has to be the end of the Watson era here. And that's just my opinion on it. If you reach a point where you have to pull him this year, then you're at the point of no return and you need to move on as an organization. Now, how you handle that financially and with the cuts, that's more of a question for Jack Duffin, as he's got that all figured out, if you read him at the OBR. But still, there is a way out of this financially where they can limit the damage. So if that decision comes, I would trust Stefanski to make it. I would love to, I hate to say this, and I'm not giving up on Watson completely, but Dave, I would love to see Jameis Winston in Stefanski's offense.
Yeah.
I think that would be fun, and I think the team would galvanize around that too.
It would be. It'll be interesting. If you think about it, Jameis Winston is a lot like Joe Flacco. Big arm, throws, puts the ball in harm's way, turns the ball over, but man makes some big plays too. And I get where you're going with that. All right, rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels talked about what he has seen from the Browns defense.
It's a very good defense. They have good players out there on the edge. I mean, obviously, people know who they have. Myles Garrett and what he's done in this league. And you got some other guys up front. Very good linebackers that like to play down here, very fast, and then outside the corners, man, they believe in them a lot, and they're good players. So it'll be a good test for us.
Yeah, and the thing that scares me about Jaden Daniels is he can beat you with his legs. And even when Jim Schwartz's defense was playing well last year, guys were beating Browns defense with their legs. That concerns me a lot.
Yeah, it's very concerning because we're seeing a trend now, Dave, where teams are attacking the perimeter of this defense, and they're having success with it every week. So there is a blueprint out there, which is kind of why, you want to see Schwartz make a big adjustment somehow, right? And maybe stop blitzing so much and just try to, let their talent play out instead of trying to force the issue all the time. However, in this game, I think they are one of the more equipped teams to handle a rookie quarterback like Daniels. Now, he's been electric. He's been so fun to watch. And I'm super jealous of them, actually, for having a player like that because he's so fun to watch. But I do think that the Browns, playing Lamar Jackson twice a year, will have a plan. And this is their chance. This could be that win that kind of galvanizes them because you're playing a super hot team. You're being looked at by the league as one of the league's worst now, power rankings down in the mid to high 20s. I don't think anybody expects them to go in there and beat them. So that's kind of when the Browns do their best work, is when everybody's counting them out. So.
Brad Ward and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at the Browns' defense first 4 weeks this year relative to last year. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, I think that the Browns should go get Greg Williams again. And I'm saying as a defensive coordinator. help Jim Schwartz with that defense. For a great defense that 1 year in 2018 brought him to 7-8-1. Do what Kevin Stefanski does best at run the football. Run the ball. Thanks. Tell me what you think.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Brad, I liked Greg Williams. I don't think he's the answer as a defensive coordinator. And again, I got nothing against him. Love his podcast. And I get where people are going with the fiery guy, but he's not coming. If he's coming, Jim Schwartz is going, and I'm not sure I'm ready to quite do that.
Yeah, we're not at that point yet. This was a defense that was the best in the league last year. They are going through some things right now, but let's be honest, Dave, as much as the defense is getting a hard time, they've given the Browns a chance to win in a lot of these games, and they've held teams to around 20 points most weeks. So the issue, even though they have struggled with tackling and teams running the ball against them, and there's certainly issues, and Martin Emerson doesn't look like himself, and there's all kinds of things. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. They still have held up and gotten big stops in second halves and given their offense a chance to go win games. So, yeah, I'm not ready to bail on Jim Schwartz. You've got Mike Vrabel in the building. They should be able to figure something out here going forward.
Yeah, and again, the defense hasn't been bad. They just haven't been good. They needed them to be elite, and they've just been pretty good because of the way the offense has struggled. Relative to running the football, yeah, they got to find something. Have to run the football. And I get the offensive line is beat up. Throw a couple more big body. Bring some of your defensive linemen in and have them move people around.
The interesting thing is they did that at the beginning of the Jaguars game. If you remember, they came out in heavy sets and they really ran the ball, and it was more reminiscent of one of the more frustrating things we're seeing is this kind of back and forth between Stefanski's offense and Dorsey's offense, right? I mean, it's kind of leading to somewhat of a lack of identity overall, I feel like. But like in the beginning of that Jaguars game, they came out in all kinds of heavy sets with Nick Harris and when he wasn't playing center and extra big bodies, and they were able to move the ball around a little bit in the run game and move some bodies around. But as long as they're losing in the trenches on both sides of the ball, they're in trouble, Dave. And that's where they've always been able to find success. And at this point, they are struggling offensively. Hopefully Conklin Will's getting back, maybe get Pochett back healthy. Although I think Nick Harris has done a pretty good job when he's been in there. You get Zach Zinner with a couple more games under his belt, and maybe this thing smooths out. But it has to start in the trenches. They have to start winning at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and you know what? It's got to start now because you're 1-3. You can't let it get much further away or it's gone. This is the Browns defense first 4 weeks, 2023 versus 2024. It's kind of interesting. So big difference. Last year, 11.5 points. This year, 20 points. But you look at some of the other metrics, they're averaging less yards allowed, which surprised me. And they're also averaging less first downs allowed. So, again, it's kind of what we had talked about earlier. The reason everybody's beating up the defense, they haven't been able to compensate for the offense's inability to do anything.
That's exactly it, right? Like, those numbers are shocking, actually. I never would have thought that when I read that. But to your point, they're not bad. They're just not playing like the all-world defense we saw last year. And can they have games like that? Yes. And do they need to probably have a game like that this week? I think so. They need a win so badly, right, that you would think this is an opportunity. Although he's been on fire, they are coming in a little high, right? Probably feeling themselves a little bit. And this defense with Schwartz, if you got and Vrabel, if they could put together, dial up a doozy of a game plan to confuse the kid a little bit, bring token pressure here and there and do stuff like that, that would frustrate him, confuse him, throw different looks at him. This is a defense that can do that. You've got JOK, you've got Delpit. You can handle him trying to run with those guys because that's what they specialize in, right? And so if there ever was a time for them to dial up a beauty of a game plan and shut a team down, this is the week to do it. And let your you can't rely on this offense to go out and score a ton of points, Dave.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. All right, key stats for the Commanders-Browns. Take a look at this one. Washington's offense comes in first in the NFL in third down conversions, picking up first downs 53% of the time, which is absolutely ridiculous. Cleveland's defense, seventh in the NFL, third down stops, only allowing first downs 30% of the time. And right there is going to be one of the keys. Can you get off the football field if you are the Browns defense? But the 53%, it's through 4 weeks. That's incredible with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. The Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels. Kingsbury has started off hot before when he was in Arizona, and teams were able to adjust to him. So I think that there is a factor here where, like, a lot of some of the stuff they're doing is new and creative, and certainly Daniels is playing at the top of his game. He played a ton of college football. He played multiple years at Arizona State. He played at LSU, and he's seen a lot of defenses. He's played a lot of football. He's one of the more NFL-ready guys you're ever going to find, right? Because of all the football he's played. I think like 55 college football games, right? So he's seen a lot in his young career, and they're trying to make it easy for him. And he's comfortable with what they do. He's identifying the stuff that Kingsbury is drawing up, and he's connecting with it, and it's made them incredibly potent as an offense, right? Like, Browns haven't scored 20 points yet on offense. They haven't scored below 20 points yet as an offense, Dave. So all that stuff needs to sway, but the third down battle is huge here because 53% is ridiculous, and the Browns should be able to get them off the field more than that.
Yeah, if you want to contrast that, the Browns' offense is converting 23% of their third downs into first downs. And they're worst in the league. So that's another one to keep an eye on. All right, before I let you go, what are the keys? What do the Browns need to do to get a win? And the difference between 2 and 3 and 1 and 4, it couldn't be more dramatic at this point in the season.
It's a kitchen sink game for me, Dave. This is everything. Like, this is a must win. You've got to go get this. So, trick play maybe early in the game, something to try to get the juices going, try to get this offense fired up. Defensively, like I said, you have to be disciplined, stay in the run lanes. You can't over pursue against him. It's the same rules that you use against Lamar every year. Don't let him beat you with his feet. Although he's beat everybody with his arm recently, I'd rather see him try to do that against the secondary, because I think the Browns have a chance to confuse him and do some different things on the back end. So the main thing here is get back to the basics on offense and try to get your playmakers the ball in space, period. Like, let's make it easier on ourselves here than what we're doing. And then on defense, I just think that the talent is still there. It's still the same guys. So can you dial up a game plan that isn't going to get carved up on the perimeter like we've seen every week so far this season? So teams have seen the tape. They've made the adjustment tape, Dave, to the tape. Now it's time to make that counter adjustment. And this would be the perfect week to do it against a rookie, confuse him, bring blitzes from different areas at different times, but be select about it, not every single down, so he knows what's coming. This is the kid that can read that stuff and find the answers quickly. So I think that those are the keys. You got to have a really good game from your defense, and you've got to have a competent game from your offense.
Brad Ward, Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Sounds good. Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. Read him in the Orange and Brown Report. He is also the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break. Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Film analysis, video breakdown, some keys for the Browns to beat the Commanders. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Time for a video analysis, film breakdown, 3 keys to beating the Washington Commanders this weekend. Whenever we do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So, Lance, at 1-3, 2-3 sounds a whole lot better than 1-4 is about all you can say at this point in time.
Well, yeah, and the schedule only gets harder. Now, in the NFL, as you and I talked before we got on here, the NFL is always, when things are going great, tendency to fall off a little bit. And when things are going terrible, they can turn around just like that. So the Browns just got to get themselves on track. They got a tough schedule moving forward, and they got to get after Jaden Daniels a little bit. It's been really, really easy for him. Not a lot of pressure. I think the Browns got to heat him up, and they got to run the ball on the other side. So there's certain things I think they can do. I think there's no panic. Kevin Stefanski has a track record of getting this team back on track, and I think he will. I think they're going to be fine. This is a big, big week. All right, so the 3 keys that the Browns have to beating the Commanders. Number 1, make Jaden Daniels uncomfortable in the pocket. So far, Daniels has not looked like a rookie at all. Well, he's competing. So you're going to see here, this is against Cincinnati. So when you watch the Cincinnati film, when you watch the Arizona Cardinals film, he's way too comfortable in the pocket. Now, the thing about it, he's completing over 80% of his passes, and he's had 80-plus points in the last 2 weeks. The things that he does really, really well are a lot. So as I watch the film, I'm trying to find some weaknesses. He can throw from the pocket. He can throw from outside the pocket. He can throw from on platform, off platform, throw on the right. He does a lot of things really, really good. I did not have him this high coming out last year when I graded him. He's really, really good. Now, the thing that I think the Browns got to do is they got to heat him up. They got to make him uncomfortable. They got to do different things with pass rush, bring 4 and 5, and even sometimes 6. They got to go back to man coverage. They can't give him easy throws. They got to get him off his spot. They got to do a good job because he does everything really, really well. They got to mix it up, and they got to make him uncomfortable. A lot of times making the quarterback uncomfortable means hitting him a little bit. They got to get him off his spot, and they got to knock him off his feet a couple times, get him thinking about the pass rush. Right now, it looks way too easy for him. Browns got to change that on Sunday. The other thing that jumps out about Daniels is he is a threat to run. He is athletic he's not thick, but he's big. So you got to worry about his legs. Yeah, he did. So they had to design run, pin and pull they did for a touchdown. They've also run some zone read down in the red zone. So, yeah, they have some design runs, especially down in the red zone. You're right. He does not have a lot of weaknesses on film. But one thing that I have not seen teams do is really heat him up, really get after him. They've tried to play coverage. He's proven that he can throw against zone. He's proven that he can throw against man. Made a couple really nice throws against the Bengals when Bengals went blitz man. So the idea of mixing it up, but more importantly, you got to get him on the ground. You got to hit him a little bit. You got to get him into the game. You got to let him know you're there because he's a guy, when he gets on rhythm, gets in the groove, he's really, really good, way beyond his years as a rookie. All right, so point number 2, Terry McLaurin. Ohio State fans will remember the name. He is a down-the-field threat, and you think Ward should be a guy that Denzel Ward should be a guy that follows him and kind of gets on him. Well, the Browns have gone, so you're going to see Terry here. He runs a really good route. Cardinals can't stay with him in man. You're going to see him throughout. He had a big catch against the Bengals. He's had a bunch of big catches. He got 19 receptions, so he's just getting warmed up. He's also a great teammate and does everything he can for like this young quarterback. When you hear everything about him, he seems like just a great teammate and a great receiver for a young quarterback. Now, the thing that the Browns, I think, need to do moving forward is that Denzel Ward is an elite corner. He's really shown that this year when he's healthy and been able to stay healthy. I think he's got to go with the best receiver each week, and then you play 10 on 10. You say, you know what, Denzel's going to take away the best guy, which in this case is Terry McLaurin. He's got to take him away, and then they can play 10 on 10, kind of like they used to do with Dion back in the day. And I really think that's something they can do because of the system. Even if they bump other receivers outside, these corners and these nickel guys, they can all play multiple spots. But I think at this point in time, Ward's a guy has proven that he might be a guy to take away their best receiver.
All right, the third thing that we'll look at in the three keys to beating the Commanders for the Browns it relates to the Browns' offense. Vertical run game and attacking the DTs.
Well, you know, if you see that, so a couple things here. You're going to see great movement by the Arizona Cardinals, who are not a superpower team. James Conner had over 100 yards rushing last week. And what you see is you see really good double teams against Washington. So Allen and Payne are really big guys, 320, 300 inside, but they like to pass rush. Now, they're better against the run than their backups. Their backups who come in, there's a number of guys that do. They're not very good against the run. This is a pass rushing team. They like to get after the quarterback. They got big safeties, big linebackers. Wagner inside, really good. So, but they can get movement on this defensive line. The Browns, whether they run their zone, which they've been predominantly running inside zone this year, or if they get back to their gap scheme, which last week they did. Ford's best run was on a counter that they had not run all game. That was their best run. Where you know, if you think about a gap scheme, big guards coming around from one side to the other. So this is a week, regardless of what they run, they can get on these double teams. They got to get the run game going. That's going to help Watson. That's going to help the defense. That's going to help everything. The run game is important. The Browns don't have one right now. And this is the week where they can get this run game going and get it to their advantage and get some guys down the box and take some shots over top.
When you look at it, Browns haven't really run the football much. Do you think it's been because they've fallen behind? What do you think the reasons for the lack of a commitment to the run game have been?
Well, I think Kevin Stefanski is kind of looked at Dorsey, and they've kind of brought in this zone scheme, right? And, you know, Browns have run zone scheme, but under Kevin Stefanski, they've been very diverse. In fact, they've been able to run zone, gap schemes, pin and pull, you name it, they ran it. And I think the Browns need to get back to being a little bit more versatile in the run game. They've been predominantly zone, like I said. Now, whether it's zone or a gap scheme, you're still going to get a big double team inside. How many double teams you get, it depends on if it's duo or inside zone or whatever scheme it is, but you're going to get a double team inside. That's what they got to get back to. They got to get back to schematically, vertically displacing defensive linemen. They just, regardless of the scheme, they have not been very physical up front. And that has a lot to do with injury and a lot to do with the scheme. So I think they got to get back to some 12 personnel, maybe a little 13 if not necessary, and start getting a mentality where they're going to run the ball downhill. You know, they'll be getting Nick Chubb back here soon. You would think he looked pretty good physically from what I've seen from you know, social media today. So I don't know. I think they got to figure out a way to get the run game going. It's got to be in those double teams, and I think it's going to be the gap scheme they're going to get back to a little bit.
Do you think getting David Njoku back potentially, which they didn't practice today, but or yesterday rather, they wasn't supposed to practice on Thursday. Do you think getting him back helps the run game?
Well, it does, especially, you know, it did, especially last year because they were so much pin and pull. To be honest with you, the zone run game, it's not huge on him. He's man up on that wide 9 technique if he's in the game, or split zone where he's going to cross the back and get the opposite defensive end. If they go right, he goes left. So it's not been huge this year. But back, if you look at last year's with the pin and pull and what Stefanski's been known for, it's very big. Counter game, he gets to the second level on those backers. So, yeah, I think it'll help in the run game and the pass game, especially if they're going to stay in this 11 personnel. If they're committed to it, which I'm okay with, then he's important because of his ability to work the field, the middle of the field with the 3 other receivers in the game. So, yeah, run and pass game, Njoku's very important.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. 3 keys to the Browns beating the Commanders coming up Sunday. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis. Check out Lance Reisland, plain dealer at cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue on Sports for CLE. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each, 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. This from CBSSports.com. Biggest need for each and every NFL team as we head into Week 5. Browns offensive line. Browns have the 3rd highest pressure rate allowed, 43.2%, according to True Media. The pass catchers need to be better as well. Browns have had the most drops in the league. They had the most last year with 39. They already have the 2nd most, 11 through 4 games in 2024, which is shocking. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach, Orange and Brown Report, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Jacob, pick a facet of the offense you want to blame. And Deshaun Watson's playing better, but my criticism of him, you've had the ball at the end of the game the last 2 weeks, haven't been able to score, haven't been able to win it. That's how I measure a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, he had a total of 6 chances in the last 2 games, 3 apiece to go down and win it, and they're unable to do it. And it's, you talk about the offensive line. For me, I've really talked about some of the little things that keep going wrong, like that Nick Harris bad snap. Not a ton of people have talked about it, I think, as much as you should. I mean, you went from 4 plays to get 10 yards to 3 plays to get 16, and ultimately sets up that 4th and 3. And you lost points when Amari Cooper dropped that pass and it popped up and turned into an interception. And they've had a bunch of penalty issues here and there. And then, like you said, Watson steps up for a lot of that game, looked pretty good, but still ultimately in the clutch wasn't able to get it done the last 2 weeks. It's just all these little things. They're just off here and off there, and they're all culminating in just a really poor performance from the offense. But I do think that because they are little things, there is still hope you can fix them.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, and I don't disagree that they can fix them, but all of those things are what bad football teams do. They have penalties that negate big plays. They have snaps. They have drops. If you were going to write down the characteristics of a bad football team, you'd get what you're getting. They've played like Jim Schwartz said it. They're playing like a 1-3 defense. They're playing like a 1-3 football team.
Yeah, it's always attention to detail, right? Like when you're good, that's some of the stuff you want to highlight. Like you look at last year, and yeah, they had a lot of drops as highlighted, but like all those other little things in those key moments in those clutch situations, they were able to do the little things right. So yeah, I mean, if you can't figure out attention to detail, especially when you're as banged up as they are right now, that is a major issue.
So passer ratings of throws of 20-plus yards this season. This from the 33rd team. Sam Darnold tops. Andy Dalton second. Baker Mayfield third. That was before the game Thursday. Deshaun Watson is 16th with an 84.8 passer rating. Jaden Daniels, who's playing really well, 21st, throwing 20-plus yards, 69.8. Which means they're throwing the ball quickly and giving him easy throws, which is why he's playing so well.
Yeah, I think that's the stuff that the Browns should be doing with Deshaun Watson right now, especially to get some of that confidence up and get some of the, just really confidence of the entire team, starting to kind of get some consistency from the offense and being able to move the ball and do those sort of things, because the offensive line has not really put him in a spot to be able to throw the deep ball all that well. And you've seen it, the numbers. He's in the middle of the pack. Well, he's not throwing the deep ball particularly well. Well, the solution to that, in my opinion, is what they're doing in Washington, what Cliff Kingsbury is doing with his mobile quarterback. And I know Jane Daniels is much younger, he's quicker, all these things, but Deshaun can do a lot of what he does down there. And so you've got a situation where you can learn something from what you're about to watch. Like, get easy yardage, because those big chunk explosive plays are not coming easy for you right now. So you have to get what you can get and stop trying to force those situations, because you've just been kind of mediocre at it.
All right, Dan Quinn, new head coach of the Washington Commanders, what he sees when he looks at Deshaun Watson on tape.
The Cleveland tape, from last season and from this season are the ones that we use. I think we all know, like, Deshaun's ability to get outside the pocket and convert and create in that way. So anytime a player is a dual threat of runs and passes and, can convert throwing it or with their legs, like, that's a big deal. They've got a number of weapons, on their offense. And so, not just, directed to him, but each game, game plan a little bit different. How do you go about it? Our own team has a quarterback that gets outside the pocket and makes a lot of plays. So we like doing competitions even at practice. You'll see that today. You'll see that tomorrow, where we just go the ones against the ones. And we feel like that sharpening of one another is really an important part of what we do, where the offense goes against the defense. We do it tomorrow again in the red zone. Today there'll be some third downs for that. It's not game plan specific towards Cleveland, and it's just us against us, having to guard Terry and try to keep Jaden contained, and here's a blitz package. All of that goes into, getting yourself ready to play a quarterback. We're fortunate that our own style is able to, lean into that.
And Jaden Daniels' running ability is concerning, because that type of quarterback has created issues the last 2 years for the Browns.
Yeah, mobile quarterbacks and jet sweeps, and they've got some guys that can do both of those things, have kind of been the Achilles heel for Jim Schwartz's defense these last couple of years. And it's just like, outside of Lamar Jackson, I think the most talented runner at quarterback is probably Jaden Daniels. I know he's just a rookie, but when you look at the pure speed and athleticism that he has, and just how elusive he is in the open field and making people miss, he's right up there with the best. And you've got a defense that has just not been able to handle those sorts of things. And they break down and they send all out blitzes and leave people wide open. And then they just don't know how to react to these mobile quarterbacks in the open field. You'd think they'd be a little bit better. I mean, Dan Quinn kind of talked about that, getting to practice against a mobile quarterback, though I understand Daniel's athleticism is on a different level than Watson's, but they've got to find a way to just be smart. I know they love to be aggressive, but this is not a game to be overly aggressive, or they will be able to exploit those issues.
All right, take a look at this. This is wild. This is highest percentage of drives ending in offensive scores this year. Commanders are number one by a wide margin. 67.6% of their drives have ended up with an offensive score. You look at the bottom half of it, the Browns are ahead of only the Dolphins, 23.9%. So it's telling you why people are looking at this and saying, it kind of favors the Commanders. When you look at this matchup, Jacob, what are some of the key things the Browns need to do to get a win? They need a win. I've said it earlier in the show. The difference between 1-4 and 2-3, it's much, much, much bigger. Because at 1-4, you're taking on water.
Yeah, and if you can get to 2-3 with the possibility of Nick Chubb a week or two from now, that is a whole different ballgame than 1-4, because you're in striking distance. There's only 4 AFC teams that have winning records going into this week. So if you can keep yourself in striking distance around 500, I think you got a pretty good shot with these guys coming back. I just think you got to play smart and efficient football. I know I sound like a broken record and everybody else does, but it's like we just talked about, Dave, those little things. You can't turn the ball over. This is a team that has not – the Commanders' defense doesn't have a single interception this year. So you've got an ability to go out there. This is a matchup you should win throwing the ball. They cannot stop the run. They're just not a very good defensive unit. If you play smart, clean, and efficient football on the offensive side, take what they give you, get as many points as you can, I think you've got a chance to hang in there with him. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to complete 80% of his passes for the rest of the year. He's going to come down to earth a little bit at some point. If you're smart and efficient on both sides of the football, there are some matchups you can exploit, especially offensively, if you could just make sure you don't get overly aggressive or shoot yourselves in the foot. I think you'll be okay.
They haven't been able to do that this year. I don't mean to be nasty and laugh, but they haven't been able to play. How big of a lift do you think David Njoku would give him? I mean, that's a guy. He would be your number one playmaker, and I think he helps in the run game. Those are two things they're looking for: playmakers with the ball in their hands, run game.
Yeah, I think he's like the perfect reinforcement for what they're doing wrong. You know, we talked about Jaden Daniels getting the ball out of his hands quickly and allowing his guys to do something. That's where David Njoku does most of his damage. You know, he kind of leaks out on a late route. He starts blocking, then just kind of leaks out to the flat. You throw it to him, let him take a 3-yard, a 1-yard pass, 7 or 8 yards downfield. They're so bad on third down because when they get to third down, they've almost always had a penalty or a negative play or some situation where it becomes these third and longs where they just don't have much of a legitimate shot to convert on a lot of these things. And I think David Njoku changes that. He can be an early down guy to get you in third and short. And I think like you talked about, like the offensive line, especially at the tackle position, is really struggling. You stick him out there to help as a run blocker and even chip guys as a pass blocker. I think it really can change the whole setup for your offense and really put them in some better situations to create some more mismatches that they just haven't been able to do at this point.
Jacob Roach, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. He is also co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. We'll talk Guardians. We'll talk Browns. Guardians, Game 1 against the Tigers over the weekend. Game 2 is Monday. So have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.